My most requested video so far is to make the building grow effect. This is how you do it. So to start, we need to grab a clean plate of this frame right here. So depending on which frame you choose, where you want the building grow effect to happen, I'm just going to use the starting frame of this clip, so I'm going to export just this first frame. To do that, I'm going to go to the color page. I'm going to grab a still. Okay, one quick thing I need to mention, when you're grabbing your still for the video, you need to make sure that your timeline resolution matches your actual footage resolution, because if you export a frame at 1080p, then when you're drawing your masks on 4K footage and vice versa, it just gets really messy. So just make sure that you change your timeline to the resolution of your footage that you're wanting to export, and then grab your still. Don't miss that step. That's gonna show up here, and I'm going to export with display let, just in case you have any color grades going on, you want that baked in. Now you will have to use a secondary software. This can be pretty much anything that can do some type of generative fill. I'm gonna use Photoshop, but there's a great website called Pixlr, and there are literally hundreds of websites that you can do generative fill for free. You just might have to generate a few options to figure out what you like. And every software is going to be a little bit differently, but this is me inside of Photoshop right here. I'm just going to zoom in on the house, and I only want to replace what I need to when it comes to the house. I don't want to grab some extra stuff over here, but because that is just going to make my transition a little rougher in the end. So we're just going to do a rough trace of the house like so, making sure that we're getting the entire house and not clipping a corner off the roof or anything like that. Generative fill, I can see that there's a bit of a fence here, so I'm gonna say white/blue sky with concrete driveway and brown fence possibly. So this one's probably my best option. What I'm gonna do now is I'm just gonna do it one more time because I actually don't want this fence here. I just did it so that it would understand my prompt a little bit better. I'm gonna generate a fill. I'm gonna say blue sky now. Blue/white sky. Okay, there we go. This is sort of the best option that I could come up with. This is after sort of like 3 or 4 generations. I just kept typing in little things just to try to get a better sort of empty lot type of look because I'm doing a house. Obviously, if you were doing something in front of a forest, you'd be typing in forest, not what I'm typing in right here. But now I'm gonna take this, I'm gonna go export and quick export as PNG. This is gonna be different for whatever software you're using, and I'm just gonna drop it in right here. Now back in DaVinci, let's import the file we just exported. And let's drag it into our timeline. We can delete our old clip. We don't need that right now. So now we just have a blank clip of our scene, but without the house. So the first process is we need to mask out each part of the house. So what I'm going to do is I'm gonna drag our clip in. This is our actual video clip of our house. If I play that here, this will just play through during the sequence. But I'm going to add a time speed node to my Fusion page, and on the first frame I'm just going to select freeze frame, and now I have a frozen frame of this first frame of the house. Alright, we're going to start with masking our garage right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a merge node to our Fusion page. We're going to plug our time speed into the background, and then we're going to add a polygon mask. And then with the polygon mask, or sorry, with the merge selected, let's take our polygon mask and mask out the garage. And you can be as detailed as you want. I've already done this a couple times now, so I'm gonna do it a little bit rougher. Okay, so we have our mask drawn, but it is not masking anything because this polygon mask, it's into the mask input of this merge, meaning that it would mask the foreground element, not the background. So what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna take it from the blue input and put it into the green. Sorry, we're gonna take it from the blue input and put it into the green. And now this is being applied as the foreground. So we need to change the merge operator mode from over, change it to mask. And now we have a mask of just our garage. To keep this organized, I'm going to hit Control G on these 2 nodes, and I'm going to rename this as garage front. Now I'm going to repeat this process for this section here, as well as these 2 little guys right here. Add a merge node, pipe it in, add a polygon mask, draw our mask, plug it into the green input, change the operator mode to mask. Select both of them, Control G. I'm going to rename this and I'm going to name it front right. I'm going to repeat the process for the remaining sections of the house. Now for this left section, you can see that the section is disconnected here between these two sections. But because this is going to be layered behind this garage, that doesn't really matter. I'm just going to pretend like it's going through the back so that it has a connection point. So I'm just going to continue my mask around the entire subject, just like so. Draw it down, bada bing, bada boom. And now all of this obviously is not pretty, but this is going to be behind this front garage when it comes down into our main pipeline, so that doesn't matter at all. So I made a little bit of a mistake. I put the text over at the start of the video so that you wouldn't miss it, but my media is a 4K video file, but when I exported my frame, the first frame of the video sequence, I had my timeline set to 1080p, and that resulted the exporting frame to also be 1080p, so it reduces the quality a little bit. So right up here, I've been working in 4K, but this blank frame where I cleaned up the background is actually in 1080. So if I were to merge this over in front, it's not gonna look right at all. Let's take a look here. It's obviously way bigger. It's not proportionate to the video at all. Okay, so I went back and I recreated this blank frame, but now it's in 4K. Now when I merge this in front, it's going to fill this in nicely and look a bit more proportionate to what it's supposed to. And as we finish this up, we get the entire house. One thing to look out for is these little gaps. So you just want your masks to overlap a little bit. So this front right, I'm just gonna open this back up, take my polygon, go to the keyframe because it's always automatically animated. So just make sure you're adjusting on the same frame so that it's not gonna animate on you. Let's just close that up and let's close that up there. And now we've gotten rid of that. Let's pull this down just a little bit, just like so. Beautiful. And now we need to animate each piece coming into the frame. So I'm just going to disconnect everything but the garage. I'm going to add a transform node, and I'm actually going to add a rectangle mask to this front element. And I'm just going to drag this over just to the bottom of the house because I want this house to come out of the ground. I'm going to give it a little bit of a soft edge, and then I'm going to invert this so that it only shows up outside of this mask. With the transform selected, I'm gonna put a keyframe at the start. I'm gonna drag the Y value all the way down so the house is hidden. And then I'm going to go forward about, let's say 13 frames, and I'm going to put the Y value back at 0.5. Now our house comes out of the ground at a consistent rate, which doesn't look very good. It needs to sort of zoop, pop into place. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna open the spline editor, grab the displacement, hit this to go full, or to frame everything so you see it properly. Select both, hit S, and what I personally find looks best is to drastically pull this first ease in. So it's gonna start sort of slow and then pop in super fast. And then I'm gonna drag this handle, and you just want a bit of a cushion right at the end, but now it's sort of clicking into place instead of just going up at a smooth rate. So our garage clicks into place right here on frame 13. So now we want this front piece to come into place next. So I'm gonna add a transform node to that. I don't want it to start animating before the garage is finished. So on frame 13, I'm going to drag the Y value down. I'm gonna hide it behind the garage, go forward about 13 frames or so, and put it back at 0.5. Same thing with the spline editor. I'm gonna take both points, hit S to smooth, drag this guy over so that it snaps into place, something like that. That looks good, but if we go back, what you're gonna see is that the piece that's hiding behind the garage obviously is still there when the garage goes down. On frame 13 where this animation starts, let's just go into our merge, select blend, keyframe it, go back one frame, and hide it completely. So now it's only gonna show up after the garage is up. Now to add some variety, this next piece, we're not just gonna animate straight upwards, we're sort of gonna push it left into its position. So same thing with the transform node. Let's see, we're done on frame 26 with this last section of the house. Let's add a keyframe on center X and Y. And let's also add a bit of rotation to this one for fun. And we're gonna start by keeping it out of frame here, so we just want to hide this section. We don't care about that because we can mask that. Then we're going to go forward 13 frames, and we're going to put it back into its spot, 0.5, 0.5, and then angle at 0. Let's go back to that first frame, sorry, and let's change the angle a little bit. So let's tilt it sort of back down. So now when it comes up, it sort of swings into place. It swings upward into place. Same thing in the spline editor. Let's set up our easing on this. Let's start with just our displacement, hit S, drag this over. Our angle, we can probably just hit an S, and I actually want this to finish right at the end with the angle. So I'm gonna do something a little bit more like so, because now it's waiting to do the angle transition until right at the end. So it's gonna have a bit more of a steeper angle when it's actually coming in. So with this guy selected, we are seeing a bit of the bottom of this section coming out right here. So we're just gonna add a polygon mask and make sure that that section is excluded from anywhere it can show up. So now it's only gonna show up where we want it to appear. And same thing, right before it animates, let's take the merge, keyframe it, and turn it off one frame earlier, because now when this garage isn't here, we're not having that in the frame at all. Now let's animate just this last section, add a transform node, go to the last frame that this section was animated, which is frame 38, add a keyframe and set the X value to the side so it can swing out from the side. And because this is traveling a way shorter distance, like this, let's just turn this off. This section, right, is super small. It's just this tiny little movement. We don't need to go 13 frames here because that's gonna be a little bit long. Let's only go about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe 6 frames, and change this value back to 0.5. Open the spline editor, displacement, hit S, drag this over. Okay, and then again, when this starts animating, we just want it to disappear right before. So hit blend, go back one keyframe, turn the blend all the way down. All right, so if we take a look at our clip, we have the base for our effect. However, it looks very static. It looks pretty boring. What we need to do is we need to add some effects, and then it also needs to transition into the moving shot. So we need to sort of blend everything in seamlessly. So there's many things you could add to this effect to make it look a lot better. You can add a lot of visual effects elements like dust going up or concrete breaking. However, I think that looks a little bit tacky because we're not going for hyper realism, we're just going for a cool effect, in my opinion, in this case. So I'm not gonna go with the dust and the smoke and the concrete, but I'm gonna go with some shockwaves and some camera shake. It's a bit more of a minimal style. So let's add a displace node after this merge. And this shockwave is gonna work really similarly to the one that I did in the person disappear effect in one of the other videos I just recently made. So if you haven't seen that, go check it out. So with this displace, we're gonna move it over to the side, and we're gonna grab the polygon from the garage front. So I'm gonna hit Control C and Control V and pull it out of there. Then we're going to add a fast noise node. We're gonna view that so we see what we're doing. We're gonna go into the color and change it from 2 color to gradient. And then in the noise tab, let's increase the scale, not too much. Let's increase the detail a bit. Maybe the contrast, something like so. Something like this is probably gonna work well. Let's pump the polygon into the fast noise and then that into the displace. However, now we're getting a displacement on the entire fast noise, or on the entire mask, sorry. So let's change the polygon from a solid to just a border. And let's put the border width around let's see, 0.02, something like that. And then let's just increase the soft edge so that's feathered. And now if we look at our displace node, what that's gonna do is it's gonna add displacement to just that border. Right now it's sort of hard to see, but if we increase our refraction strength, you can see that it's just happening on that border. One thing I forgot to mention, in your fast node, make sure that you turn your seed rate up. That's just gonna add a bit of motion to your fast noise. So it just creates a little bit more of a shockwave effect. And now we're going to have to do a little bit of keyframing. And let's go to our transform from our garage, and that finishes on frame 13. So on that same frame, let's put a keyframe on the size of our polygon. So let's keyframe the size, then go forward roughly, let's go 20 frames. So that's frame 33. And now let's increase the size so that it completely goes off the screen. Let's change it to a 6, should be good. That should be cool. Well, let's go all the way up to it. Yeah, let's just make sure that it goes all the way off of the screen. Now, as you can see, the shockwave goes away from the building itself, but it starts going away once the actual garage hits into place. But we don't want the shockwave to start before, so let's just make sure that we keyframe the polygon level. So on frame 13, once this garage is in place, let's keyframe level, go back one frame, and turn the level completely down. Now with our displace node selected on frame 13, let's get a look that we like. So that's a bit too extreme for me. Yeah, that's all right. Let's add a little bit of light power, so that's just gonna add a little bit of shadow and darkness in there. So with our polygon, if you think about a shockwave, it sort of goes boom, and then it slows down over time. So we want to do that same thing with our polygon. So let's open the spline editor of the polygon, and let's grab both the keyframes of the spline. We don't need to worry about polyline or level in this case. Let's grab both of them, hit S, and again, let's start fast. Let's not go too extreme, because then it's going to jump from 0 to halfway through the frame way too fast. We don't want to be that extreme, but we still want it to start fast and then end slower, so something like that. And then it slows down as it gets closer to the edge of the screen. So it goes bang, it gets placed, bang. Okay, perfect. This shockwave slowly dissipates over time. So with the first keyframe, frame 13, we already have set a keyframe. And then on the last keyframe, frame 33, let's make sure that we bring that down to 0. So over time, at this point, we're at about half of our original power of refraction, as you can see. So now we have the garage coming into place and a shockwave coming from that garage. Now let's repeat this effect for every element on the house. But instead of adding multiple fast noises and displaces, which is just gonna slow down your computer like crazy, we're just gonna put we're just gonna put a mask tree above our fast noise, but I am gonna name it so that I remember what's going on here. So I'm gonna name this into garage, or garage, I guess. Then we're gonna take the front right, and we're gonna copy it in here. I'm gonna paste it. I'm gonna rename this to front right. And in this transform, for that front right piece, it finishes on frame 26. So with front right selected here, again, we have to change this from this solid right here into a border. I'm gonna use the same border width for all of them, so 0.02. And then I'm just gonna increase the soft edge there a little bit. And then that's gonna be masking that fast noise again. And that's gonna go into the displace. So with this guy, we don't want it to be distorting the footage before it appears. So we have to put a keyframe on level at frame 26 and go back one frame, turn it completely off. And then go forward to frame 46, which is 20 frames later, and turn the level back down. And here the size needs to be completely off the screen. And this is where we run into a bit of an issue. You can see that when I increase the size, the pivot point is from the center of the screen, so the size is going up towards the sky. Sometimes that's fine, but in this case, there's no detail in the sky, so you're not actually gonna see the shockwave at all. So to start, you can take the center, and you can move it over top of it, but obviously that's moving your entire mask as well. But now you can select your mask and you can move it back over, roughly right over your subject again. In this case, it doesn't have to be precise because the shockwave is not perfectly precise. But again, it makes a keyframe, so make sure that you go to your other one, the initial keyframe, and unkeyframe that so that it's only this keyframe here. And now when we increase the size, it's going to originate from our element. So it's coming straight out towards the camera. All right, and the alternative way to do this, this is supposed to work, but for some reason it's really buggy. But if you have a mask like this, let's say this right here, but we want to move the pivot point, the center, right over top of it, you're supposed to be able to hold M and then grab the center and move it without the mask moving. But earlier today when I was trying this, it was moving the mask as well. So it doesn't always work, but if it doesn't work, then you can use the other method I just showed you. One little thing that we're quick running into right now, because this polygon that we drew for this side shape, we sort of just went random on this side because it was going to be hidden anyways. You could leave it as is. I'm just going to choose to clean it up a little bit. So we're just going to drag this up just so that it sort of matches the shape of the element a little bit better. But for the rest, we'll just do the same process as always. Beautiful. Now we have shockwaves coming from each of the elements as they're appearing into frame. Let's add a little bit more of an effect inside of the shockwaves by adding prism blur. And we can just pipe this right into the prism blur, and we don't have to do anything else. It's only going to follow the actual blur, or sorry, the actual shockwaves itself, because we already did all that masking. The only thing that I'm going to turn down is the blur strength, because I don't need it to blur the footage. I just want this aberration color inside of that shockwave. All right, so we have our house animated in, and we have the shockwaves. That looks great. Now we need to add some camera shake, and then we need to blend this shot into our actual footage. And let's add a camera shake node. Now there's two different options here. There's camera shake and there's also camera shake. One is an open effects tool and one is a fusion node. Both will work. I'm just going to use the fusion method, which is the one without this gray box around it. So we're going to add that in, and the controls are a little bit more limited. All right, so as for keyframing the camera shake, something that I find looks good is we want to find the frame when the house is, or the garage is appeared into frame, which is frame 13. Set a keyframe on overall strength and leave it at 1. Let's go back 5 frames and turn it down to 0. Then after this keyframe of 1 on overall strength, let's go forward until we see the next piece of the house appear, which is about right there. Let's turn the value back down to 0. Now let's go forward until the house appears, which is, or sorry, when the next section appears, which is right here. Let's turn the value back up to 1. Let's go forward as far as we can. Let's see here, the next piece starts appearing there. Let's add another keyframe at 0. And now let's see when this clicks into place, which is right there. Let's add a keyframe at 1. Let's go forward, add a keyframe there, drop it down to 0. And when it clicks into place, add a keyframe at 1. And then the last one, let's go forward about, let's say like 20 or 15 frames. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Actually, let's do around 12 frames and turn it back down to 0. Now, if we open our spline editor with our camera shake selected, you can see we got this spiky looking graph here. And the way that I find it looks good is you want a bit of a rumble, and then it clicks and punches into place, and it shakes the camera, and then it slowly dissipates, and then rumble, and then boom, and then that's sort of how you get that. You almost get a sound out of the camera shake. That's the effect that you're going for. And the way that I find it this works is turning this into sort of these almost waves, if you want to explain it that way. So what I'll do is I'm just going to start by clicking S on all of them so that I get a handle on all of them. So on the effect coming in, which let's say the first camera shake right here, we're at 0, so it comes in. We want it to come in as slowly as possible, right? So what that means is we take this handle and we drag it over as far as possible. Now we got this effect coming in slowly. And then what we want this effect to do once it clicks into place is we want it to dissipate slowly. So that means we take this handle up here and drag it out forward as much as we can. And now we have sort of this almost shark tooth, if you will. It goes in slowly and out slowly. And then the next one, same thing, in slowly and out. And that looks good. Now we sort of have an effect that we're going for. But now you might be thinking, it's like, what if we don't want the actual camera shake to be at an effect of 1, because now we're always keyframing all the way up to 1. And if we actually turn the camera shake on, I mean, you can see by the checker boxes where our camera or where screen is going transparent. It's quite a drastic effect. So what I'm gonna do instead to control the actual strength of the effect is I'm gonna adjust these deviations here. But instead of doing them each individually, which just takes a bunch of time, I'm just gonna show you a quick trick to do something with expressions. So I'm gonna add an expression to rotation. So I'm right clicking and adding an expression. And you just take this plus and drag it to Y deviation. And then with Y deviation, click expression, drag that to X deviation. And now when you control X, it's gonna control all 3 parameters. So in my case, I think something probably around 0.1 is probably gonna look pretty good. And then for the borders, so that when we are receiving camera shake and there is some checkerboarding going on here, we don't want that to just show as black. We want that to either reflect or duplicate. So if I click duplicate, it's just gonna extend the pixels on the edges. So now we have a proper camera shake effect of when the elements are clicking into place, but I want some overall camera movement as well. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add a second instance of a camera shake. This time I'm gonna use the open effects version just because it's a little bit smoother. I'm gonna turn the speed down quite a bit. to around there. And now there's just going to be a little bit of camera movement throughout, but there's also that shake once pieces click into place. Now let's blend this shot into our actual video footage. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to bring it down into our pipeline. I'm going to drag it onto the timeline. We're going to just turn off that merge just for a second here. So I want to hide it with the shake of the last piece clicking into place, which is this back left. So if we go into the transform, we can see that on frame 45, it clicks into place. That's when the shake is going to be the most intense. So at that point, let's add a time speed node to our video footage, and let's change the delay to 45, because now this actual video here, which is just the regular footage, is going to start playing at frame 45, and it's not going to play before, and it's just going to be transparent. Let's turn our merge back on, and now if we play this through or scrub through, it's actually transitioning into the real footage at frame 45. And I just want to make sure that you guys put this before your displace node, so it's happening before the shockwaves and before the camera shakes, so that that is actually baked over top of the actual footage. Now let's play this through. And you can see it transitions pretty smoothly. The only thing is our actual footage is moving towards the house and our still frame is not. So let's just add that motion to the still frame. Before our footage is merged over, let's add a transform node, and on frame 45, let's add a keyframe to size. Let's go back to frame 0 and let's reduce the size to maybe a 0.8. This is going to be dependent very much on your actual clip itself. Now again, you're getting a lot of transparent background here. I'm going to change the edges from canvas to mirror, and obviously this is not going to look very good. We're going to crop in after the fact again, so that's okay. But now let's, after the camera shake, so at the end of the pipeline, let's add another transform node. Let's increase the size just to the point where we don't get this mirrored effect anymore. And now if we watch this back, you can see that we have this forward motion, the camera shake, and it actually pretty much seamlessly blends into the actual footage of the house. But obviously it's cut short, but we can just extend this composition to pretty much the end of the clip. And then if we play through, it's going to continue moving towards the house. Now we're pretty much done, but usually you want to add as many things to make a still frame look like a video as possible. So in this new video that I'm actually producing right now, I figured out a way to make a 3D house effect, but I've also figured out a way to make grass and trees look like they're actually moving in a still frame. In this case, we don't have any grass or trees, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the truck lights on this truck, so that there's a lens flare that's moving with the footage, but it's not going to look like it's baked into the camera shake of the footage. It's going to move sort of independently, and that's going to give it a bit more of a realistic effect. So to do that, let's add a tracker, because we are actually going to organically track this footage. And I'm going to put the actual light on the headlight, but this headlight goes out of frame real fast, so I'm actually going to track this mirror here instead. And I'm going to just go to the last frame that the mirror is in the shot before it goes out, so which is somewhere right there. I'm going to place the tracker on top of the mirror, and then I'm going to track backwards. One thing I forgot to mention is for this tracker, you want to quick turn off the displace just temporarily, because you don't want the displacement to affect the tracker position. All right, so our tracker followed that mirror pretty great. We can turn our displace node back on so we don't forget. Now after the tracker, we're going to add a lens flare. And you can pick your favorite lens flare, but pretty much we need to pin this position on top of the headlight. And the way that we're gonna do that is we're gonna go into position, we're gonna right click it, connect to tracker 1, not tracker 1 in telepath, because that's gonna link it to the exact position. We're gonna put it on the tracker 1 offset position. Right now, look, it's right on that mirror where we put it, but in the tracker, we can adjust the offset down here. So let's move the X value and the Y value. If you enable this button here, you can actually grab the offset with your mouse, drag it over your headlight. Let's adjust the lens flare to look like an actual headlight. All right, that's fine. And this is now baked over top of our footage, but you can see that our tracker ends when this mirror goes off a frame, and that's gonna pretty much screw with the lens flare position. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna open the spline editor with the tracker selected. And what you can do to sort of continue this path is you can right click and click gradient extrapolation. And this pretty much does the average movement and continues that movement. So now the tracker will continue in the average direction of the truck. But we don't want this lens flare to keep going on forever. So sort of let's go around, it doesn't really matter. Let's just slowly decrease the blend of the lens flare over time as the truck goes out of frame. So something like here, we shouldn't see much of the lens flare anymore. Let's turn the blend down to 0. And then lastly, obviously you can add some sound effects to really sell this effect, but that is how you do the building grow effect. Like I said, I have a 3D house effect coming out pretty soon. If it's out, I'll just link down in the description. If it's not, just make sure you subscribe so that you don't miss out on that. Lots more tutorials coming your way, so see you next time.